Goodness. Hello, boys. Hello, all of you boys and girls. Oh, boy. Yeah, anyhow, yeah. So I'm just kind of milling over what I talked about yesterday. And, yeah. So really what I was doing is I was just revisiting a former era, a former Angry Hobo era, where this is what I talked about. I talked about, all this stuff that I went over in my videos yesterday. And it just falls on deaf ears. And like I said, it's like, that's fine. Don't listen, that's fine. Listen to Richie from Boston and Stu Peters talk about Jewish space lasers and interdimensional beings. And then when the next, lockdown rollout comes rolling around, and all these people that'll never listen, they're going to start complaining again and crying all their woes is that they're victims of the Jewish space lasers again, and they're victims, all this victimhood. Who is that prince and princess in England or something? They're like some of the richest people in the world, and they went on international television and like were literally claiming themselves to be the victims of poverty and stuff. They're like the richest people. It's all these people. They're like the least victim of anything, and then they're the ones that are paraded all throughout all media as they're the victims of the terrible space laser invasion and stuff. But you know what? This is what I'm saying. Is like deaf ears, nothing but deaf ears. I mean, you could be just hitting the head on the nail with truth, like nonstop, and you're going to be the most ignored. You're going to be the least listened to. That's just the way it goes, That's the way of the world. It's fascinating. It's stranger than fiction, isn't it? Yeah, I'm sure is, right? So anyways, but who cares? Who fucking cares? Man, where's the weed store? I got to go smoke some weed. So yeah, so that's all I talked about in my last channel, and it's just like whatever. It's fine. I don't see any point in going on and on about it like I did on my previous channel. So every once in a while I'll bring it up and talk about it, But I talked about like things that aren't, even though life, I believe life is too important to be taken seriously. There are a few aspects that I do take seriously, for lack of a better term. I take seriously. And the first being is abstinence from all mind-altering intoxicants, heroin, crack cocaine, speedballs, DMT, psychedelic psilocybin mushrooms, LSD, tequila and all that. I take abstinence from all that shit very seriously, for lack of a better term. And in order to maintain my abstinence from these things, it requires me to work toward spiritual fitness and work toward removing Wedico from within me. Soul sickness, to remove soul sickness from within me. And soul sickness are things like greed, lust, whatever, all these soul sicknesses. And that's the only way I'm going to maintain abstinence from intoxicants, is to pursue spiritual wellness to the best of my ability. And the secret to spiritual fitness is helping others. And helping others is how I help myself. So if I'm like trying to figure out how can I help others and stuff, it's not because I'm on some self-righteous, thing. That's not the motive. The motive is self-preservation. Because if it's true that in helping others is how I help myself, and it's true that I want to help myself because I'm not a suicidal maniac, well, then the logical thing to do is just to help others in order to help myself. Same with freedom. Whatever freedom I do have, which, believe it or not, abstinence from all mind-altering intoxicants, it enables a whole new freedom that I never knew existed before. And if I value that freedom, well, then I need to defend the freedoms of others in order to protect mine. Okay? So, if I want to defend the freedoms of others, should I stand up and protect the prince and princess of England who claim themselves to be the victims of all the space lasers? Are those the people I should be helping because they're claiming that they're victims, Or any of these? Go down the list. Richie from Boston is a victim of censorship. So I'm going to send him $1,000 the next time he puts up a GoFundMe, Meanwhile, that old lady that's looks like she's been homeless for 10 years and she's eating out of a dumpster, I'm just going to ignore her because those people, they just brought it on themselves, those lazy bums, And, it's the Jews. It's a genocide. Yeah. See, none of this makes any sense. And so you might agree with me that none of this makes any sense. I don't know. But when I go online, all I see is all this insanity. Nobody makes any sense. Nobody makes any sense. All anybody keeps talking about is Jewish space lasers and global genocides. And it doesn't make any sense. And when they're complaining endlessly about Jewish space lasers and global genocides, they're never offering up any solution. All they're doing is foaming at the mouth, demanding violence. We need to fucking start killing everybody, And see, none of it makes any sense. And like I concluded in my last video, if something doesn't make sense, it's probably not true. That's a Judge Judy quote, by the way. Wise woman, in my opinion, in my prideful opinion. Judge Judy's fairly wise, She's not a perfect person like you or all these other perfect people all over on the internet, but that's true. If something doesn't make sense, it's probably not true. And I could go on and on explaining how that there's a global genocide from vaccine doesn't seem to make any sense because I don't see anybody around me suddenly dying, and I haven't. But for years, all anybody's talked about is how everybody's dropping like flies from sudden death due to the vaccine genocide. But I haven't seen it. I haven't seen the Jewish space lasers either. I haven't seen any of it. But, if I'm in Houston or Dallas or Denver or Sacramento or LA man, I see all kinds of people that look like they've been homeless for 10 years, that are just like half dead, struggling to crawl to the dumpster to pull a fucking rotten hamburger so that they don't die of starvation. I see that like anytime I go to Houston, Dallas, Denver, LA, all these different places, it's like everywhere. And no one ever talks about that. And all anyone ever talks about are the invisible Jewish space lasers, everywhere. All this invisible stuff, the invisible COVID, the invisible, sudden death syndrome from a global genocide, the invisible, space lasers, all this invisible stuff, the invisible interdimensional beings that are flooding into our dimension through the CERN portals, and all this gay dumb bullshit. Like, but then what else I see is everybody else going along with it. They're all like, yeah, that's right. I see these interdimensional beings everywhere. Yes, I see this white supremacy everywhere. Oh, I see the Jewish space lasers everywhere. Oh, you're right. Oh my God, the sky is falling. The Jewish space lasers are falling the sky. You see everybody online. They're just drinking this Jim Jones Kool-Aid all day. Just shit in the bed all day. And it's pathetic. It's so fucking pathetic, dude. It's a joke, And they get really upset when you question it. If you're like, well, dude, you're talking about these Jewish space lasers everywhere, but I haven't seen it. And then they fucking just flip out. They're like, you're a stupid motherfucker. Anybody that can't see the Jewish space lasers is a fucking blind as a bat sheeple. Put your They Live sunglasses on. Take your red pills. You dummy dumb poopy poo-poo pooey poop. Like, it's the dumb. And I mean, like, you guys are buying what these fucking sellouts are selling? You're buying this shit? Yeah, wow, man. I mean, just wow, But again, it's stranger than fiction, isn't it? Everything is it's stranger than Jewish space lasers. It's stranger than global genocides from vaccine. Far stranger than the alleged, facts as to what it's far stranger than that. Because what's stranger than Jewish space lasers and interdimensional beings and massive global genocides is, what's stranger than all that happening is if all of it wasn't happening at all and everyone in the whole world, that's all they ever talked about is that it was happening when none of it was. That would be stranger than it actually happening, where there's Jewish space lasers and global genocides from vaccines and interdimensional beings. No, what's stranger than that narrative is that none of it has been happening at all, and 99.99% of the entire world, that's all they ever talk about is that it is happening when it hasn't ever happened. And it hasn't been happening at all. And everybody's just drinking the Kool-Aid. That's stranger than if it were actually happening. Stranger than fiction, my friends. Yeah, stranger than fiction. Yeah, and that would be stranger. What would be stranger than Jewish space lasers and interdimensional beings and global genocides happening? What would be stranger is if none of that was happening, 99.999% of the entire world, all they did was talk about that it was, even though it wasn't. Meanwhile, you've got masses of hordes of fucking homeless people who are getting trampled on by the government and stuff, and everybody just ignored it while they went on and on about Jewish space lasers and global genocides and interdimensional beings. Meanwhile, the real shit, everybody just ignored it. That would be stranger than fiction. That would be a really fucking crazy conspiracy if it were true. Truth is stranger than fiction, isn't it? Yeah. But anyways, so this channel is Storytimer, and I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to be doing the Angry Hobo channel where I keep going over and over about this, because the truth isn't popular. Nobody cares about the truth. So there's no point in talking about the truth. So I'm not going to do that, you know. I might revisit it from time to time because it's a very fascinating, because the truth being stranger than fiction is extremely fascinating. So I will revisit it, but I'm not going to dedicate my channel to it. Just go watch Richie from Boston. He's going to tell you what's really going on, and all these others, they're all telling you what's really going on. So there's no point in me talking about anything that's really going on. I could talk about my trailer, you know, fixing up my trailer, you know, whatever. I talk about the weather, you know, whatever, right? Yeah, and you can all live in your fantasy world where you're fighting the Jewish space lasers, and you're fighting off the interdimensional beings, and you're fighting off the global genocide stuff. Go ahead, man. Yeah. Right. Meanwhile, you know, in the real world, you know, the only thing that's truly going on is the boiling frog effect, and there's nothing sensational about the boiling frog effect. It's not sensational. It's actually really boring, because it's just the boiling frog effect. And so, yeah, that is going on, and it's really a terrible thing, and it's really something that, you know, all of us boiling frogs should be doing something about, which none of us are. But yeah, so that's happening, but that doesn't have anything to do with Jewish space lasers and global genocides and interdimensional beings. That's just we're all just being, you know, we're all just being boiled in the boiling frog effect, slowly, very slowly. Just turn up the heat just a little bit. Meanwhile, you know, fill everybody's head with all this stuff about laser beams from satellites and interdimensional beings and global conspiracies to genocide the planet and stuff. Yeah, that's all just bread and circuses to entertain the boiling frogs and distract the boiling frogs from the heat slowly rising, you know. So yeah, the boiling frog effect sure is real. And you can see it, because you can see that some frogs are have been boiling for a long time. Meanwhile, other frogs like you and me, we're not experiencing it, but we're seeing, like, you know, like that woman who's eaten out of a dumpster. It looks like she's been homeless for 20 years. Yeah, that boiled frog looks pretty toasty. But that's not happening to me. I don't feel the boiling heat like that person does, so they must have just brought it on themselves. Meanwhile, let's get back to the space lasers and the, you know, interdimensional beings and the, you know, the global conspiracies and stuff. But yeah, because it's totally awesome. It's like we're living in a movie, you know. Isn't it totally awesome?